Okay, good morning. This morning, the EUFOODSAFETY platform has the honor to host Dr. Ivan Nastasievich from INMES Institute, the Institute of Meat Hygiene and Technology. Uh, Together with us, Dr. Nastasievich will introduce will celebrate the World Food Safety Days by exploring and presenting a really important study and issue behind your plate, from waste to wealth in the meat chain, making food safe, sustainable, and better food for the planet. We are very glad to have you with us, Ivan. So the floor is yours, and thank you for sharing your studies and expertise.
Dear Anuncia, first of all, I would like to thank you. Many thanks to you, to Veronica and colleagues from the EU Food Safety Platform for inviting me to contributing to the celebration of the World Food Safety Day. I will use this opportunity to address to my dear colleagues, to citizens, participants from all across the Europe and around the world, and again to express my pleasure to welcome you, dear guest, for the celebration of this multi-stakeholder dialogue for World Safety Day 2026, which is organized, I would like to point out again, by the European Union Food Safety Platform. This year's celebration, it reminds us that food safety is not only the responsibility of one sector alone, but it is rather a shared commitment that connect science, industry, regulators, farmers, educators, but also consumers. And I am really honored to participate in this event in the spirit of this celebration with my presentation with the title, Behind Your Plate, From Waste to Wealth in the Meat Chain. Brief introduction of my professional background. I'm Dr. Ivan Nastasievich, and I'm affiliated with the Institute of Meat Hygiene and Technology located in Belgrade, Serbia. And today's topic, which I will present, highlights an increasingly important question for modern food systems. Well, how can we transform biological materials, traditionally considered waste, into valuable resources while still maintaining the highest standards of food safety, of public health, sustainability, and of course, consumer trust? From rendering and bioactive compounds in circular bioeconomy approaches and innovative technologies, the meat chain offers really significant opportunities to reduce these losses, to support sustainability goals, and to create additional value for the overall society. So I do hope that this presentation will encourage constructive discussions, knowledge exchange, and stronger cooperation about all stakeholders involved in shaping safer and more sustainable food systems, of course, which we are obliged to preserve for the future generations. Now, I will just continue presenting my topic. Again, we are discussing about our plate, what is behind our plate, from waste to wealth, for the meat production chain to making food safe, but at the same time sustainable and better for our planet we live in. Why these questions matters? First of all, I would like to point out that food safety is really part of our everyday life. So it affects every meal we eat, whether be it at home or restaurants or on the go, street food. And this is not technical issue which is reserved only for experts dealing with that, researching about the food safety. It is also really a basic condition protecting our health. So it's important for the public health perspective and of course our well-being. Why is meat is so important to be discussed about, and all these sustainability, waste issues, safety, quality issues? Meat is highly nutritious food, but also very sensitive and perishable. For example, in typical serving, you may expect 22 to 22% of proteins, because meat is really rich in proteins. For example, chicken breasts, they have around 26 grams, or lean beef about 25, and so on. But it's also full of different vitamins, minerals, so it's very nutritious kind of food supporting our health. At the same time, it is very sensitive, perishable, so it can easily spoil or even become unsafe if we are not properly handling it throughout the whole production chain, from farm to table. For example, if you are not keeping temperature requirements during the storage and transport, so we are jeopardizing cold chain, it can become spoiled and of course jeopardize our health. At the same time, all food systems and also meat production system produce enormous benefits, providing abundant food for the population. But in parallel to that, it also generates different food waste, which carries risk of contamination, loss of resources, and putting a lot of environmental pressure. So it means that food safety should be linked with the sustainability. And it matters for everyone because it is not about protecting our health or reduction of waste. It's also help ensuring that our food system should remain sustainable and responsible, as I mentioned at the beginning, for future generations. Here in this slide, you can have a look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and there are 17 of them. And now we will see and we will learn how food safety is linked with these United Nations SDGs, or again, Sustainable Development Goals. Well, there is a primary and secondary connection. Primary connections are with the SDG number 2, which is zero hunger. Well, it is obvious that we cannot achieve food security without food safety. The second is SDG number 3, which is good health and well-being. Of course, foodborne diseases are related to the health, so we have to work on reducing them and also protecting additional pressure to our healthcare systems. However, there are also secondary goals and systemic connections between food safety and other SDGs. For example, it is goal number 1, saying it's no poverty. So we need to fight foodborne illnesses because they prevent people from working, leading to the loss of income. So by preventing them, so we are also protecting the income. SDG number 6, it's about clean water and sanitation. Of course, we all know that for the production of safe food, we need clean water. SDG number 8, it is about decent work and economic growth, because food safety is really vital for the international trade. SDG number 12, it's about responsible consumption and production because it reduces food waste if we are carrying out responsible production. At the same time, responsible consumption means that we as consumers need to adapt our dietary habits, so to produce less food waste. However, the final connection, which is very interesting, is Sustainable Development Goal number 15 with the title Life on Land. And it is linked with the One Health concept, which we will discuss a little bit later. But in general, this is connection between animals, food-producing animals, humans, in a shared environment. So what kind of connection food safety has with the One Health? Basically, through the foodborne diseases, of course, but one of the hot topics, very important topics nowadays, is antimicrobial resistance, which contaminates soil and wild ecosystems and can be transferred to humans. But again, we will discuss a little bit later on this topic. What about the meat chain? In order to try to explain you in simple words, this is just kind of journey of meat traveling from the farm to our plate. So we have different phases during this meat production system, and each of them is equally important to prevent the problems by the end of the production and at the final product, in the final product. So these phases are farm, so this is primary production, livestock farm. Then there is a transport of animals to the slaughter. Then we have slaughter and dressing. After that, we have meat processing. After that, we have a storage and then distribution, and finally retail or our plate. And every step, as I mentioned, is important. How animals are raised and treated at the farm level, how they are moved during transport, how they are slaughtered, processed, and finally transformed into food that reaches us as a consumers. So if something goes wrong at any of those points, it can affect the final product. In this slide, I would like you, if you can remember this as a concept, because it is not related only to the meat chain, it can be also transposed for the other food chains. But the meat chain is one of the more complex, and in this slide you can see the nature of the contamination along this overall meat production chain, starting with the environment, animal feed or feed production, animal farming, transport, animal markets or lairage, abattoir. For those who are not aware, abattoir is the same as a slaughterhouse. Then we have meat processing, packaging, storage and retail. Finally, retail, catering and consumers. On the left side, you have chemical agents. On the right side, you have biological agents. And all these agents or hazards, which can jeopardize food safety, can enter the overall meat production chain at multiple levels, sometimes simultaneously or synergistically. Of those which are chemical agents, we have agriculture-based or associated, and these are pesticides, agrochemicals, pesticides, fertilizers, phytotoxins, and mycotoxins, which are naturally produced, but still they are entering the food chain at the level of animal feed. Then we have veterinary medicines or veterinary drugs, which are antibiotics, growth promoters, hormones applied on a farm level. During transport, we have tranquilizers, so that animal can easily, of course, take out these transportation conditions. Then we have preservatives, additives, and different additional ingredients during meat processing. And finally, at the packaging level, we have different packaging compounds which can be transferred to the food, like plasticizer, different inks, and so on. On the right side, biological agents are usually different bacteria, viruses, and parasites, and they can be water and soil-borne as well, transferred to animal feed, or they can come from the so-called vermin. What are vermin? Vermin is the term for the rodents, insects, birds, which can bring some pathogens and put them and contaminate animal feed. At the level of farm, at the level of transport, at the level of animal markets or lairage, we do have horizontal transmission of pathogens to the contact of animals. In the farm level, we also do have vertical transmission. This is done by birth. During the slaughter and processing, we had different opportunities when the cross-contamination of meat can happen, with poor, good hygienic practices which are applied, inadequate temperature control, cross-contamination even sometimes during the meat processing with the human-borne pathogens such as Staphylococcus aureus, and all of them can provoke microbial growth and jeopardize food safety. So once again, I would really like you to remember just this concept, because it is very important to understand the overall structure of any food chain, not only meat chain. But we still didn't say basic definition. What is really food safety? Well, we say that food is safe basically when it is free from harmful hazards or contaminants. So it means that it is making sure that food we eat will not harm our health. So according to some estimations on the right side of this slide, you can see some data extracted from the World Health Organization Foodborne and Epidemiology Reference Group, which is for the first time, it was published in 2015, which is about the global burden of foodborne illnesses. And you may see here that it was estimated that about 600 million people fall ill annually at the global level by eating due to the consumption of contaminated food. And more than 400,000 deaths are registered, and loss of the 33 million healthy life years, or in a brackets, this is daily, this is usually expressed as disability adjusted life year. So it's loss of good life. It is basically loss of possibility to work properly, to create income, and to be healthy, of course. And out of those millions of people that fall ill, the most vulnerable population are children under 5 years old, which represent more than 40% of this disease burden. But we should not forget economic burden, which is around 95 US dollars, even close to 100 billion per year. So which are these hazards which are creating these foodborne illnesses? These are, as we mentioned, biological hazard, mainly bacteria, pathogenic bacteria, which are Salmonella, Campylobacter, Shiga toxin-producing E. coli, Listeria monocytogenes, Yersinia enterocolitica, and many other. There are also viruses like hepatitis E, or there is a norovirus, but it is norovirus. It is not linked with the animals. It's human-borne, but I'm just mentioning that. Out of these chemicals, which are important for us and they can contaminate the food chain, these are hormones, veterinary drugs or antibiotics, dioxins, pesticides, mycotoxins, because they contaminate the environment, animal feed, and then we have them accumulated in animal tissues and our food. But we should not forget physical objects like fragments of bone, glass, plastic, or metal. So, in all, food safety is just about always keeping food clean and healthy from farm to plate. But how these food safety hazards are really managed and controlled? They're managed, the best managed, through an, we call it, integrated system from farm to fork. So combining all phases as it is mentioned, from farm to our plate, to be sure that we are minimizing the risk in every single step. We are applying international standards, we are applying risk-based targets and scientific risk assessments. For your information, it is good to know that there is one commission working on the global level, and this is Codex Alimentarius Commission, and this is intergovernmental body established in 1963, jointly established by the two UN agencies. One is Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and another is World Health Organization, WHO, and they jointly implement food standard program to this commission of Codex Alimentarius. The two main jobs or tasks of the commission is to protect people from unsafe food and to make food trade fair between countries. That is why the World Trade Organization is frequently using standards published by the Codex Alimentarius Commission to resolve different international food trade disputes. In order to understand how the Codex is dealing with the food safety metrics, I will try to explain you this cascade, which I think it will be informative and interesting. First of all, from the umbrella level, from the top level, we have ALOP, or appropriate level of protection. This is usually set by the government at the national level, and we can define the maximum tolerable public health risk, for example, the number of foodborne illnesses per 100,000 population. Okay, so we are defining the national goal regarding public health, which is linked to the food safety. And this is again ALOP. How we will achieve ALOP? Of course, by defining food safety objective. Food safety objective now is the maximum frequency or maximum concentration of a hazard allowed in a food product, but at the point of consumption. This is important to understand. But how we will achieve the food safety objective? By setting the performance objective. Performance objective, again, is the maximum level of a hazard now allowed, not at the point of consumption, but before that, as a single specific step earlier in the supply chain, before packaging. So to minimize the accumulation and occurrence of the hazards before the point of consumption. How we will achieve performance objective? By setting the performance criterion. And this is specific control measure to achieve this reduction at specific step of the food hazard. Example is, for example, cooking procedure. For example, we are producing cooked meat product. So we are carrying out pasteurization for the specific logarithm reduction of bacteria. And this is performance criterion. How we will know that we achieved successful logarithm reduction of bacteria during cooking? Well, we will know this by setting microbiological criteria, and these are laboratory testing limits to verify that this product is safe. And we are using internationally recognized methods for testing. Usually they originate for the International Standard Organization, just for your information. And now the direct example of this Codex Food Safety Cascade metrics is as follows. I'm giving now the explanation. Appropriate level of protection set by the government, define the level of public health, saying we would like to reduce salmonellosis associated to poultry. It is usually Salmonella enteritidis and Salmonella typhimurium. We would like to reduce it to less than 5 cases per 100 population per year. How we will achieve it? By setting food safety objective below. So we can define that the prevalence of Salmonella in fresh poultry meat in the retail placed on the market during its shelf life. So the prevalence must be completely absent in 25-gram sample. So this is example of the food safety objective. Okay, let's move on. How this is linked with the risk assessment. At the European Union level, by the General Food Law, which was published in 2002, the European Food Safety Authority has been established, and it plays a central scientific role for the food safety governance across the EU. It conducts independent risk assessments, so there is no political influence in that. These are just scientists working in different panels, like biological panel, animal welfare, chemical hazards, and so on. And they are doing their work independently, evaluating different biological, chemical, and novel emerging hazards which may be found in food and feed. Based on that, EFSA provides scientific opinions based on the best available science at the moment to inform EU risk managers. From the top level, this is first European Commission, then it goes down to the member states and their national authorities, such as environmental, veterinary, food, and public health authorities, and they further set regulations and control measures based on these scientific opinions. I like these slides so much, and it'll help you, I'm sure, to remember, together with the meat chain structure before, another one. This is second one to remember. What is really globalization of food and what it really means the world on your plate. In this example, you have one of the most popular selection in the restaurants, which is famous chicken Kiev. It's a kind of rolled chicken breast filled inside with the breadcrumbs, batter, herb butter, and different spices, as you can see on the right side on the slide. It is garlic, it is lemon, parsley, pepper, and so on. But you can read from how many countries these spices originate. It is really the whole world, from Europe, from the France, UK, Ireland, Belgium, from China, from Indonesia, and so on. So remember that when you order something in some restaurants, anywhere in the Europe or everywhere in the world, most probably you will eat more than one ingredient which is not local, which is interesting. So it means that food safety is really interconnected on a global level. How we can basically start when we would like to achieve the adequate level of food safety or appropriate level of consumer protection. We first need to start with animal health, because healthy animals, it's really equal to the safer food. Because all these pathogens can be transmitted from the livestock farm during all processing phases of the meat production chain to the final product. So we need to start at the farm level and to apply different strategies. One of them is herd health surveillance program, which is helping us to prevent disease, but also to protect animal welfare. And the another one is farm biosecurity. This is a set of different management practices which are designed to prevent, minimize, and manage the risk of introducing and also spreading infectious disease within a farm. There are three major pillars of the farm biosecurity, or three major principles: segregation, traffic control and hygiene, and management and monitoring. I will try to explain briefly each of them. First is segregation. This is probably the most critical step. Why? This is about quarantine stock. So we need to isolate all new or even returning animals before completely letting them to join the main herd to see if they have some signs of disease before that. We need to set control boundaries, to install perimeter fencing, and to block out different wild animals, stray livestock, birds, rodents, and so on. We need to create zones, which means to establish a line of separation between public areas and clean production zones to prevent introduction of pathogens in the production zone where animals are raised. The second principle is traffic control and hygiene. These are well-known issues, but it is still good to repeat them. This is restricted access, which means that we need to limit entry to the farm only to essential personnel and to maintain a strict visitor logbook recording of the visitor. We need to sanitize vehicles, to wash and disinfect the tires and undercarriages of all entering machinery. We need to provide protective clothing, uniforms, and boots for the workers and visitors. And the final third principle is about management and monitoring. Management is to secure safe inputs. So we need to buy, to source animal feed and water exclusively from certified and reputable suppliers. We need to pay attention a lot to the daily management of the animal waste or manure. So on the daily basis, we need to capture it, to storage, to treat it, and so on, in an environmentally sustainable and safe manner. And finally, to report early any sign of animal disease. So we need to monitor animal health on a daily basis. After the farm and these biosecurity and herd health surveillance programs, we have now transport in the second phase from farm to slaughterhouse. Which issues are important to be remembered in this phase? First of all, we need to carry out very gentle handling because it reduces animal stress and protect animal welfare. But this is also relevant from the point of meat quality and meat safety. For example, if animals are stressed during transport, they can reduce the glycogen levels in their liver, and of course the pH level can be jeopardized. It can rise or it can be higher depending on the type of stress. Usually in bovine, this is dark, firm, and dry meat, which is on the left side down there, very dark, or pale, soft, exudative meat on the right side, which is more common in pigs. In the middle, there is a normal color of the meat. But this is only quality issue, it's not safety. But stress is also relevant for the meat safety issues because stressed animals can fecally shedding their feces, they can shed different pathogens like Salmonella, Shigatoskin producing Escherichia coli, and they can cross-contaminate animal hides and then cross-contaminate carcasses during slaughter. Second, we need to clean transport vehicles to sanitize and disinfect them on the regular basis, so to prevent the contamination of this transporting environment. The third phase is slaughter and inspection. In this phase, we need to apply the good hygiene practices, which means strict hygiene rules, but there is also veterinary inspection supervision at the level of slaughterhouse. This is ante-mortem inspection, where the veterinary inspectors are examining incoming live animals, and this is so-called post-mortem inspection, when they inspect meat and offals, internal organs. This is kind of the checkpoint, so because to remove unsafe products, which are not for the human consumption. Some of the basic principles of the slaughterhouse hygiene are categorization of the animal hides according to their cleanliness, then removal of hide or dehiding and skinning, removal of internal organs, which is evisceration, keeping clean tools like saw and knife, and keeping equipment clean, like these are workstations, overhead rails, and so on. In the next phase, after the slaughter and dressing, we are coming to the meat processing. In this phase, the clean facilities and equipment are important to be maintained to prevent microbial cross-contamination. Then, strict separation of raw and ready-to-eat products is very important. I will explain it later. Effective sanitation of equipment and facilities. And finally, when the meat product is finished and prepared, we need to storage it to keep meat cold and safe, to follow the strict temperature control throughout this storage and cold chain. On the right side of the slide, you have some recommendations for the cold storage, for the thermal processing cooking, and post-cook cooling. So you can see that the maximum raw meat storage which is recommended is 4 degrees centigrade. Raw room exposure is around 10 degrees and deep freezing in -18. For the cooking, thermal processing, these are recommendations. The whole muscle cuts from beef, pork, or lamb should be cooked at the minimum internal temperature of the 63 degrees centigrade. For the ground meats or community meats, it should be 68 to 71, but I'm advising you always to be on the higher end to have 71. And for the poultry, it is the highest. So it is the minimum internal temperature which is required of 74 degrees centigrade. Why is that? Because poultry is frequently associated with Salmonella and Campylobacter. But it's not only about cooking. The equally important is efficiency of the post-cook cooling time. Usually in the industry, there are two phases that are followed. First, after cooking. First phase is rapid chilling from 57 to 21 degrees immediately after the cooking within 2 hours time. In the phase 2, we need to have rapid chilling from downwards from the 21 to 5% to 5 degrees centigrade within additional 4 hours. And these are usually recommendations which are applied, for example, in this concept within the United States Department of Agriculture, Food Safety and Inspection Service. And I would like you to remember the third slide, and this is the third one, which is the temperature danger zone. And it says, hot foods must be held hot, always at minimum temperatures in 60 degrees centigrade, while cold foods must be always held cold, around 4 degrees centigrade, or even colder. And there is, remember that, the famous 2-hour rule, which means that perishable food should never be left in the danger zone for more than 2 hours. But if the ambient room temperature is above 30 degrees or a little bit more, the window drops to just 1 hour. So be careful in keeping the foods too long out of the refrigeration zone. This slide, you can see the typical mistake which we do in our kitchens, in our households during the food preparation. And this is the example of the cross-contamination of the vegetables with foodborne bacteria. It may be Salmonella or Campylobacter. Why? Due to very poor hygiene practices, because the same knife is used and the same cutting board is used for cutting first the raw poultry and then cutting with the same knife and the same cutting board the vegetables. You can see on the second picture, you can see the meat juices, and that can be, of course, associated with Salmonella and Campylobacter, so you can contaminate the vegetables. So you need to keep strict hygiene and use separate tools and cutting boards and knives for meat and for the vegetables and so on. That is why the World Health Organization prepared a globally recognized set of the very essential, very core principles which are designed to prevent foodborne diseases anywhere in the world and everywhere in each different setting. And we call it 5 keys to safer food. It means keep clean, keep environment clean, our hands, our working surfaces, our working tools like knives and so on. The second principle is separate always raw and cooked food. The third is cook food thoroughly at a minimum of the 70 degrees. In some cases, it might be 63 as you saw it, but in order to be more sure, 70 is kind of the standard. Keep always food at safe temperatures. I'm repeating again. Keep hot food hot, keep cold food cold, and use safe water, of course, always, and safe raw materials. Now, apart from these complex meat safety discussions, let us bring this discussion and direct it more toward sustainability. So what is really the sustainability? It is some kind of magic world, but this is in the meat food chain, it means producing, processing, and distributing meat while still maintaining environmental balance, but also economic viability and social responsibility to use our resources wisely by optimizing feed efficiency, energy consumption, water use, to reduce waste and pollution across the supply chain by properly managing byproducts, controlling gas emissions, and packaging waste, and of course, to have always into our minds that we need to protect the future generations. So do not deplete natural resources or compromise ecosystem health. This slide, you can see how it should like. So we are starting from the responsible farming to the transport and animal welfare, safe and efficient processing in a slaughterhouse, packaging, consumption, waste reduction, and reutilization of animal byproducts and waste, and finally using renewable energy and producing low emissions of gases. What about environmental impact of the meat production? Well, meat production uses a lot of land, water, and energy because it requires a lot of land for grazing and feed crops, consumes large volumes of fresh water, and a lot of energy for the processing, cold storage, and distribution. It contributes to a certain extent to the greenhouse gases emission, usually methane and nitrous oxide, generates organic waste and manure, and processing byproducts that can pollute air and soil. Having in mind this greenhouse gases issue, there are many research and many groups nowadays advocating and saying that meat production chain is jeopardizing a lot environment by as a main contributor of the greenhouse gas emissions. Probably it's not completely true because there are many other industries that are contributing to this. So we need to be careful, and all these statements should be evidence-based and science-based. What is good in all this? It is good that improvement is always possible because this environmental impact can be reduced by the improved feed efficiency, improved manure management, precision livestock farming using different sensors and cameras, regenerative grazing systems, and above all, circular bioeconomy approaches. Before I will speak a little bit more on this circular bioeconomy, let us have a look. I would like to point out these two documents, which are very important for understanding the importance of the traditional or conventional or industrial meat production chain. The first document is the Dublin Declaration, which was issued in 2022, and that was a statement by scientists emphasizing that livestock systems are really essential to the global food security, to our livelihoods and nutrient cycles, and that their role should be always assessed with a very balanced and evidence-based sustainability framework. On the other hand, there was another document called the Denver Call of Action, issued 2 years after, in 2024. It is about stakeholder statement, urging that we need to apply always science-based approach to the meat chain sustainability and to recognize the role in meat and agriculture in food security, while still striving for the continuous improvement of environmental protection performance, animal health, and production efficiency. You can have a look more on these two declarations when you have a time. There are web links that are available. So what about circular economy? It means basically that nothing should be wasted. Okay, that's clear. So everything what is possible can be reused or recycled. In this case of the meat production chain, these are so-called animal byproducts, which are bone, blood, fat, hides, skins, and trimmings from slaughter animals. So we can turn them as a waste into kind of certain resources. The example is production of gelatin from animal collagen, or production of pet food for animal offals, or production of different medical products, which are heparin, insulin, bone graft materials, heart valve bioprosthesis, chondroitin sulfate we are all using for the joint health, and so on, or different supplements to the bioactive compounds, which are different peptides and proteins, and these supplements are contain essential amino acids, omega-3 fatty acids, and so on. All these issues are linked with the so-called animal waste, and they can be transferred to the valuable resources. How the meat production is linked? Now we are coming to this One Health concept, how it is linked with One Health. First, let us give the definition of the One Health according to the One Health Commission. So, One Health is a collaborative, multi-sectoral, like we do have today, multi-sectoral dialogue, and also transdisciplinary approach, working at local, at regional, at national and global levels to achieve optimal health and well-being outcomes, and it recognizes the interconnections between people, animals, plants, and their shared environment. This is important to understand that the people, animals, and plants, we all do share the same environment. So you can see how environmental health is connected with animal health, and animal health is connected with the health of the food-producing animals, which gives us the food. And human health is connected, of course, with either direct contact with food animals or via consumption of food. And why this One Health matters? Because there are many zoonoses, and zoonoses are specific diseases that can be naturally transmitted from animals to humans, but nearly 60% of all diseases can be transferred to humans via direct contact or food consumption. One of the most important problems is antimicrobial resistance, which is shared problem and shared responsibility between environmental, veterinary, food, and health authorities. Why it is emerging? The antimicrobial resistance is usually sourced from overuse and misuse of antibiotics in the livestock farm. So different pathogens, different bacteria can develop resistance and then be transmitted to the soil, to the water, to the environment. And then animals, which are, of course, carriers of these pathogens which are resistant to antibiotics, can transfer this to the food which we consume. And then humans can acquire antimicrobial resistance, and the treatment protocols in healthcare settings and hospitals can become ineffective because certain antibiotics in antibiogram, probably you might have this situation from time to time, they are not responding well. So the resistance is shown, so we have to use different sorts of antibiotics to have effective treatment. So this is a shared problem. And in this slide, you can see how it is shared between livestock production, slaughterhouse, consumers, and so on. So again, we can introduce antimicrobial resistance and resistant bacteria to the food consumption. How we can achieve the smart food systems which will be capable to maintain the food safety while achieving this sustainability. First of all, we are introducing new inspection methods, which are improving the speed and consistency of meat safety inspection. Some of them are computer vision systems or AI-assisted carcass or meat evaluation using hyperspectral imaging so that we can see contamination of the carcass or the quality of the meat and so on. We are introducing new testing methods like biosensors or molecular diagnostics like PCR. And of course, we are developing better monitoring systems, which are different digital traceability platforms so that we can trace back the origin of meat and to identify the point of contamination, or the example also is integrated cold chain monitoring system using Internet of Things sensors. In this slide, you can see the typical function of the biosensor. So we have sample collection, you have preparation and sample extraction to the biosensor, and you have a measure in the mobile phone, which is of course equipped with the application. So there is app, and you can just upload the electrode of the biosensor directly to the phone, and you can see the result. So for example, you can measure and you can see the quantity of acute phase proteins, which are inflammation markers. So we can understand if the animals are healthy or not. Then you can detect the level of the stress hormones like cortisol, so we can evaluate animal welfare. Finally, you can detect different pathogens like Salmonella or Campylobacter and so on, so you can understand about the safety of the product. Okay, let's back to the sustainability issue and how we can reduce food waste. Well, through better storage and transport, to longer shelf life and smarter consumption habits. Better storage and transport means improved refrigeration, maintenance of the cold chain, and hygienic food handling. Longer shelf lives means better technology, innovative packaging, preservation methods, and optimized processing conditions, while smarter consumption habits means that we need also to change ourselves and our habits in our diet. It means that we need to plan our meals much better. So this is a change of the purchasing behavior, not to overload our refrigerators and then to have a food waste. We have to maintain the proper food storage at home. And we have, of course, to think about responsible portion management, again, to reduce the food waste. So what is, in overall, the future of the meat systems? It's about advanced biosecurity, precision monitoring, and innovative food safety technologies to achieve safer production. It is about less food waste, which will be achieved through improved processing, packaging, and supply chain management. And it is, above all, more circular use of resources to achieve sustainability. Again, this is to increase the percentage, the level of valorization of animal byproducts, like we discussed before. So it is to recycle nutrients and waste streams into valuable food, feed, and bio-based products. I would like to point out at the very end of this presentation the key messages. There are 3 of them. So food safety protects everyone. No one is excepted. But we have to understand that it is very complex, and behind every safe meal is a whole chain of farmers, processors, inspectors, and consumers which are working together to protect public health. The second is that we have to know that waste can become value. So animal byproducts and food waste can be really transformed into valuable ingredients, energy, and bio-based products through sustainable innovation. And finally, the third one, we all play a role. So every action we take contributes to the safer food systems and a more sustainable future. So thank you for your attention and participation. I do hope that this will probably contributing to stronger cooperation between all stakeholders involved in the food chain and in the meat production chain. This time we are talking about it. So feel free for additional information and also collaboration opportunities to contact me on the following emails. Once again, many thanks, Nuncia. So that would be all for today.
Thank you, Ivan, for your very, very comprehensive presentation, and you explained all the importance of the existing food safety along the meat chain, unveiling some aspects that are not only technical, but affect the consumers and the public health, and also introducing us, explaining us how starting from the SGDS, Sustainable Development Goals, and a big framework that sometimes we feel far from our daily life. Really,
Exactly.
we deal with practical use and consumption. So thank you very much for this important presentation. We will share it among our partners and network, and we invite also people to share it because it's very important with this presentation, with many input for an overall understanding of the challenges that we are all facing with, not only in the meat chain but also in food in general. So as you said before, this is very important. Everyone should act according to preserve our resources, and this is a responsibility of producers, of scientists, of consumers, of institutions. So we all together can contribute to make our world
Exactly,
safer and better.
Exactly, I completely agree. Thank you for your nice words. And it is also about protecting our way of life.
Yeah.
In Europe in particular, but I believe all around the world.
Yeah.
While still permitting the new technological advancements, but we would like still to preserve our culture and a way of how we enjoy our food. So that's why this food safety and sustainability has to be understood better by the citizens. And I do hope that by this presentation, I did some small contribution.
Thank you again, Ivan. Thank you very much. And we do hope to see you in the future for further tips and overall presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. And please send
Okay.
me recording if you are okay with that.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much.
Have a good afternoon and say hello to Veronica.
Okay. Thank you.
All the best. Ciao.
Okay. Just a moment.